webpage for announcements of future events and look forward to your continued interest in a cloud. Moving on to our seminar today, our topic is conflict resolution for win-win relationships at work. And our guest speaker is none other than Elder Elaine. Let me introduce her a little bit. Elaine was a seasoned corporate professional, having worked for and retired from AT&T for more than 30 years. At this time, she is passionate about promoting Christian values in workplace and currently leads numerous organizations in that effort. She is truly an example of servant leader who inspires others to give more and do more. I personally benefited greatly from her sharing many times ever since I met her a few years ago. With that, let's welcome Elaine.
Wow, thank you, Justin. Hello, everyone. What a good Friday to come back and share with you today. And we're thankful for At Cloud Ministry offering such practical and valuable workshops. Can you see my screen okay? Do you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is a two-part workshop about conflict. As you heard in the promotion video, how often do we run into conflicts? A lot of times, right? We're actually going to do a poll later. And when there's people, there's going to be problems. And problems usually could associate with conflict. So we're going to do part 1 today. And then we'll do part 2 when we come back in September 11th. So we're going to talk about what conflict resolution, and our goal is to help us understand how to use the right communication skill. And we've learned quite a bit of communication skill in the last few months. So we're going to come back to apply them for the right conflict resolution strategy in the right outcome. And the goal is to build trusted and win-win relationship, whether at work, at home, or in the community, or even in a church environment. Because whenever there's people, we know there will be conflict. So our goal is all about trusted and win-win relationship. And we're going to define that over time, right? Win-win doesn't mean that you're always going to have your way. And we're going to define what that means. So we're going to talk about why conflicts come about and how do they come about? And what are some impact when we have conflicts? And what are some potential outcomes? And then there's a model that's very well known defining the different scenario of outcome for conflict resolution, whether it's win-lose, lose-win, lose-lose, or win-win. And you could choose, and it's your own intention and it's your choice as to which outcome is the right outcome. It's not always win-lose, meaning you have to get your own way. So we're going to look at the different scenario, how to apply. And then we're going to walk through a journey of conflict resolution from different stages. And there are 9 of them. So there are many practical skills I'll share with you, and we'll do part 1 today. So when we're working together, when we have conflicts, that's going to cause us not able to work well together. So we're working together is not working. So you can see how important conflict resolution is when we work together. So what's the definition of conflict? And we could imagine it's really sharp disagreement and difference in opinions, interests, and ideas. Very sharp. One say yes, one say no, very strong disagreement. In fact, in the Bible, there are many examples of conflict, right? One classic example and very well known is Paul and his mentor, Barnabas. Barnabas coached Paul, and they were on a missions trip together, and yet they have a sharp disagreement about whether to bring Mark along or not. Paul has an opinion on Mark and didn't want to bring Mark along. And Barnabas is always a man of encouragement. He said, no, we should bring him. So they were in such serious conflict that they had to part way. So in a way, it's not a good outcome later on. And of course, God used that to teach Paul and Barnabas lessons. And at the end, Paul actually reconciled with Barnabas and also came to appreciate Mark. So that's an example of how conflict can evolve in our lives. And the Bible has a good example of that, and we'll come back to it. So is conflict always bad? That's a trick question, right? When you look at this cartoon, it looks disastrous, violent, really heartbroken. In those situations, the conflict could be bad. So we're going to think about, actually, conflict could be good. So let's look at what are the two types of outcome that we may usually expect. Most cases, we thought that conflict, it's bad because it's messy. It's unpleasant. It hurts my feelings, get me very stressed, emotional. Some lives could even be damaged, destroyed, because there's such a strong negative reaction, resentment, and bitterness. Really not well handled. So those conflicts could be really bad. And yet, on the other hand, conflict could be really good if we handle them well. Conflict, a lot of times when we work on a conflict resolution, it isn't actually the issue itself. A lot of times it's actually the process and the journey of resolving it and the outcome of actually getting to know each other better, coming up with solutions that we couldn't have thought of on our own, and we could be more creative in designing a out-of-box solution. So conflict is actually needed in society, in our lives, in our family, in our workplace. When we understand differences and know that could be a conflict, and it's going to be helpful for us to make a change. If we don't deal with or resolve and face the conflict, there's always going to be difference, and it's not going to be a long-term situation that could help our relationship or help our overall work partnership. So conflicts need to be properly resolved, and that helps us to build good communication and good relationships. So we're going to go through very specific skills and approach how we can do that. So there are three myths that people think about conflict. So we just went through it, right? It's wrong that we think conflicts are bad. If we think conflicts are bad, we should just avoid them. So avoiding them, running away from them is not going to help. And the second myth is, oh yeah, conflict's natural. It's hard to prevent, just let it happen. Indeed, we know whenever there are people, there will be problem and there will be conflict. Now, preventing it is actually a good thing. But we thought, oh, it's probably going to be hard to prevent. But believe it or not, we're going to go through, there are ways that we can prevent it. Is prevention the same as avoidance? They're two different things. Prevention is proactive, working to eliminate that conflict that could happen if we're proactive about it. Avoiding is after the conflict happens and you just run away. So that's not going to be productive. And of course, there are situations that we may avoid, and we'll go through those. And then the third myth is zero-sum game. We thought, okay, it's going to be either their way or my way. And it's either going to be, 1 or 0 or 0 or 1 or half and half. But guess what? That could be a myth. Sometimes 1 plus 1, it's greater than 2, meaning that we can learn to make the pie bigger. So it's not just one same pie, the same size pie that we cut it into pieces to share. It could be a bigger piece of pie if we come up with solution that can grow the benefit for both of us. So when we have conflicts, what are some impacts? We could feel really frustrated in these 6 areas. We could have very physical impact. Some people would lose sleep over it when you have conflict that cannot be resolved. You get very emotional, angry, and get mad and get even, really upset. And psychologically, you could be very depressed because you're disappointed. You could be distressed. We couldn't have to go further because we all know and experienced it. Socially, we could have broken relationship, right? Could be coworkers that you don't get along, or your boss, your customers, your vendors, or your marriage. That would be bad, right? Could be as extreme as getting a divorce, which would be really hurtful to the family, or with your children or your family or friends. And then financially, right? When you have conflict that's not resolved, you ended up spending more time and money and more effort to figure out and try to work it out. And then spiritually, we could be drained if we don't come to God and we don't handle it correctly. And the good news is we can always come to God for wisdom. And we're going to share some of those today. So if we don't handle conflict well, we have those stress and all those impact in our life. And why are we so afraid of conflict? And why would conflict come about? Because we have these 5 universal fears. We are very fearful and worried when we're criticized, when we're rejected, when we fail, when we have something and then we lose it, someone taking it away from us. And I've experienced that, right? When people take away projects or people from me, it's very stressful. And that was one year that I cried every single Sunday night. That was the Sunday night blue, really challenging, right? And not getting what you want. It's certain need not being met. These fears can introduce very nerve-wracking emotions, and we could easily react, and it could easily cause conflict when we don't handle our emotions well. So here are some 5 very smart counter approach. And I just love how it's such different and yet drastic impact to help us. Recently, I kept coming across this word, curious. If we have a mindset of curious, not just learning knowledge about IQ, if you're curious about people instead of being critical, you're curious to learn more about my coworker, my boss. Why do they think differently? You have a mindset of trying to learn more about them instead of criticizing them. That's going to be a big benefit and a big blessing to help address the conflict. If you're more caring than crushing people, right? Typically, with our sinful nature, we tend to say, wow, I need to beat them. I got to win. That's how I was before I became a Christian, right? It's all about me, myself, and I got to win with better grades, better school, better results, better score. And yet now I learn as a Christian, it's so much easier for us to know we want to care about people. Remember, servant leadership, right? Is to help others to be successful and help them to be the best they can be for the greater good, right? So third approach is to connect before correct. So when we go through the many different strategies and techniques of resolving conflicts, the foundation and the core principle is to build connection, build relationship. Then you can correct. Same thing with parents teaching children. I say all the time, like the workshop last night, I talked about how do we build a stronger immunity of family relationship during this COVID-19, starting with loving and accepting them and connecting with our family members, with our coworkers, building relationship. Then you earn the right to correct them. And when we're curious, you know to ask questions. Don't just assume. A lot of times when we have conflict or when we have difference of opinion or personality, we just think, oh, they must not like me. We assume and we make oftentimes wrong assumption. And that is not helpful because once you have a wrong assumption and a wrong perception, you ended up invite more trouble than solution. You ended up making the wrong assumption. So we learn to ask, right? One of the communication skills that we talked about is how to ask good questions. What are the techniques of asking good questions so we can express our curiosity, care about them, and make connection with them? Such as, tell me more. These are 3 very powerful and magical words, whether in work, family, or in the community. When you're willing to ask, tell me more, very simple. not even too much wisdom on how to ask. Just say, tell me more. You know, people like to talk. People like to be heard. People like to tell them how they feel. They like to tell others. So when you say, tell me more, that's very inviting. That's helping you to express curiosity, caring, connection, an easy way to ask. And they say, oh, what happened next? Wow, people love to tell you that. So consider these 5 approaches to help counteract all these 5 different anguish, concern that we may have. So conflicts are legitimate. They are indeed real. And in fact, I coined the phrase, some are healthy conflicts, right? And some are unhealthy conflicts. And when you think about conflicts, they're real conflict that it's worth the time, the energy, the effort to work on. And they're going to give us good results, and they're healthy conflicts. And there's another kind called perceived, assumed. We thought, oh, we're different, perceived. So let's look at those. And those to me are unhealthy conflicts. So real conflicts are truly coming out of situation where our needs are not met or their needs are not met. Whenever our needs are not met, our goals, our interests, our desire are not addressed, we feel there's a conflict because we have difference in opinion and style, personality, culture, value, right? These are just some examples. So those are real. And those are worth exploring and resolving. And those are healthy. Why? Because that way we get to know each other better. And many times it could be agreeing to disagree, and we can do things differently. And sometimes we can agree how to do it in a new way. And then real conflict also a lot of times because of limited resources, right? At work all the time, right? You have so much budget, so much time, and so many headcounts. And when we have different opinions, we have to make a decision. So we have to reconcile in some way, and we'll look at the different strategy to do that. So those are real, valid, legitimate conflicts, and those oftentimes could be healthy, and it's good to address them instead of avoiding them. Now, the next group could be perceived conflicts. Those are conflicts, in my opinion, are not healthy, not worth spending the time and the energy, such as because of poor communication, right? You said something wrong or bad body language and you cause some bad reaction in emotion. Remember those tricky numbers, right? 55% of our communication is body language. 38% is because of our tone, our volume, the way that we communicate, and only 7% is about our words. So all those communication can cause conflict or misunderstanding or make the wrong assumption. And this long list of ignorance, error, wrong historical assumption, biased, arrogant, jealous, poor organization structure, ego, power struggle, emotional, I had a bad day. All those are not legitimate. And those are perceived conflicts. And those, in my opinion, are very much unhealthy. And we would handle them very differently. Many of these, you may just walk away and let them calm down and really address the root issue. So they're not truly legitimate, healthy conflict. So we handle them differently. So we talked about prevention. We could be proactive, how to avoid, not avoid, but really prevent conflict. So we look at it in 2 perspectives. First, it's personal. At a personal level, how can we prevent conflict, especially those that are perceived and unhealthy, right? If it's emotional, arrogant, we would want to help build a relationship by being a better reflective listener. And we talked quite a bit about those when we did the ABCDE communication skill. Active listening to reflect and rephrase what they said instead of just keep preparing to get our next point across, right? Really active listening and have great respect. Accepting the way they are. We are different and we need to accept that, right? We've all created and designed in a different way. Being vulnerable, this is very powerful. when you're humble and vulnerable to share your own shortcoming, your own mistake, and apologize, it goes a long way in preventing conflict, both at work and in the family. And then being assertive, it doesn't mean that you have to always yield and always be on the losing side. We also need to be assertive. So we're going to look at a model on that. So those are some examples of personal interaction that we could prevent conflict. So for work setting in an organization, how can we prevent some of those conflict in a proactive way? For example, if there's some organization structure that really lead to conflict, for example, same project, multiple organizations working on it, that's not productive. So we're going to reorganize and try to integrate. And if the leader tend to be defensive, whenever we have conflict and when we're defensive, that is not helpful to resolve conflict, because then again, people will get put up at the guard, right? And think that you're not listening. You always think that you're right. And if the whole culture in the company, in the organization can be nurtured to have a win-win climate, always think about working and collaborating together. And better word than compromise is collaborate. And we'll look at a model to see that. So that would be a good culture to develop in an organization. And then have very clearly defined and well understood policies and procedure, right? SOP, so that people knows the process and the guidelines. So it's well defined boundary condition. So you don't have to assume or guess or second guess. And then have a controlled degree of change control and change introduction whenever there are changes. So these are good organization level procedure to help prevent conflict. And that would be prevention is better than cure. So this is a very famous conflict resolution strategy by Thomas Kuhlman. And they actually have an instrument called TKI. And it has many of us probably know about it, and we're going to go into this in detail and how to apply this in our work situation, specific conflict situation. So the y-axis is how assertive are you? How much do you care about your concern? Lower left would be when you are not assertive. You just, it's okay, you know, I don't care about my concern. I just give everything away without much wisdom. And then on the upper left would be when we're very assertive. I want to make sure I'm getting my way, either my way or no way, right? It's only my way. So that's the y-axis. And then the horizontal x-axis is how cooperative you are. On the left is when you don't want to cooperate. You want to run away, you don't want to work with them. And on the right is when you are very eager to cooperate. And based on this matrix, we would have 5 different approaches to work on conflict. And to be honest, all 5 can be used. It is not like one approach has to be the only way. There is one that is the best if possible. And yet, depending on the time and energy you have and depending on situations, we're going to go into that in detail. And you see the orange here, right? That orange looks delicious. And it's our lunchtime. It's good to have an orange. So use the orange as an example. If we have a conflict, and when we are very eager to just give away our right and not assertive, when we don't care much about our own concern, and when we don't want to cooperate, that's when we avoid, just part way, just what Paul and Barnabas did. So we have one orange, we have 2 people, we both want that orange. Avoiding means putting orange on the table, no one has it, no one gets it, so it's lose-lose. And then if I want to cooperate and I still don't get my own concern satisfied, my need is not being met, but I'm cooperating. So, okay, all right, you can have the orange. So now it's lose-win, then they have the whole orange and I get nothing. That's accommodating. And then the third one, it's in the middle of both some combination of medium assertive and medium cooperation. We'll compromise. Okay, we'll just cut the orange into half. You get half, we get half. So it's kind of partial win, partial lose. That's compromise. And then the fourth one is, no, I've got to win. It's all about me, myself, and I. It's my concern. It's The world center around me, I got to win. I'm not going to cooperate. So I got to have the orange. So it's win, lose. So I take the whole orange, right? There's certain consequence to that, and we'll go into that in detail. Finally, you see the arrows. Both arrows are going up, means we both elevate and we can both be better selves, and we can be assertive and also cooperative. And that's going to take some time. We're going to talk and say, what do you need the orange for, Justin? And what would Elaine need the orange for? Oh, Elaine wants the orange, just the skin, the peel. I just need the peel to do some cooking and baking. Oh, Justin wants the orange juice. Oh, sure, you can have the whole orange juice. That is when 1 + 1 is greater than 2. Now we both get win-win. That's a simple example, but that's to illustrate the point, how we could try to work on collaboration. And that takes communication and understanding of each other's needs. So Guowei is going to launch a poll. We're going to have 4 questions. Guowei is going to launch that for everyone to answer these 4 questions. You're going to have to answer all 4 questions before you submit, please. And this is anonymous, so no worries. We're not going to come after you and say, why don't you handle conflict well? So when we see about half of the people finish all 4 questions, answer them honestly. How often do you run into conflict? And there's a research, I'll show you the result and see how well you match with the result. Less than 10%, 11 to 25%, or 26 to 50%. And in the past conflict resolution experience, regardless of whether you got your way or not, whether your need was met or not, in general, what percentage of those conflict resolution experience actually came out to be better, beneficial outcome? It's actually positive learning and positive relationship. So pick one. All these are single choice only. And then how well do you resolve conflict? Give yourself a grade. Is it very well? Is it good, average, or not well? And that's why you're in this workshop, right? And number 4, and the final one, is the model I just explained to you. TKI, the Thomas Kuhlman model, okay, TI. And when we have about half of the people finish with the survey, we will stop the poll. So we'll give you another, we're not there yet. We have about 1/3. Okay, 5 more seconds, go away.
Okay.
This is a healthy group. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. And Guowei can share the results. All right, can you all see the result? Are the results showing, Justin?
Yes.
Yes.
The results are showing.
Good. So this is a healthy group. You have conflict less than 10%. That was the majority, half of you, which is a blessing. I'm happy for you. Hopefully it's not because you are running away or avoiding them, and that indeed you may have prevented them. That's good. And then there are 22% of you do have 26 to 50% of conflicts. And then question 2, 11 to 25% of you find that the past experience actually, 48% of you find that past experience is actually very beneficial. So it's about a quarter of the time that you actually find it beneficial. So that's good. And some of you even find 40% of them are beneficial. That's healthy. And number 3 is how well do you handle? Most of you are good and average. So only 17% are not well. So, so you're already doing well. I'm very proud of you. And then the 4th question is, seem like most of you, 50%, choose to compromise when you resolve conflict, and 13% collaborate. In fact, for research tells us most people try to avoid conflict because they're afraid, and we'll explain some of those. And then research also tell us 25 to 40% of the time people spend on doing conflict resolution. Good, thank you. So that's an idea of how this audience is about conflict. Now let's look at each one of those 5 and learn from each of them. When do we actually use avoiding? Avoid is when we don't want to cooperate and when we're not assertive. We just want to hide, hope it goes away, don't want to deal with it. Postpone, withdraw, very passive. And it's not helping the other people to reach their goal, and I'm not assertive to pursue my needs. So it's a lose-lose proposition. When is this appropriate? When this issue that we're discussing that caused the conflict is very trivial, it's not worth it. Or the other extreme, when it's really high cost and it may not be my responsibility or I don't have a chance to win. So you make the assessment and determine lose, avoiding and not to talk about it is probably better. Or when the atmosphere is very tense, for example, at work, when your boss is really strong opinion on something that he's responsible for, and of course you don't want to go against your boss and you may just avoid it, or a coworker or a teenager in your household that they are very strong in how they what clothes they may choose to wear. So if certain things that are okay to compromise, such as clothing, not the character or certain family value, then it's okay to avoid and lose. So the caution here is sometimes the issue may resolve itself, which is good, but hoping is not a strategy. So hopefully somehow it's still resolved. And then avoiding is not a long-term solution. It's not a good approach in the long term, unless it's not important. Accommodating, when it's highly cooperative and then you are not very assertive. And this is when you just give away everything and let them have their needs. So this is when we're very selfless, very generous, just yield and give in. And we don't care too much about our own concern and just try to address other people's concern. And this could very well be a good approach in many cases. For example, when you're with someone you really respect and you care about. So this is a lose-win. And this is in cases where the other person is expert or they're in authority, like your senior VP, or they have a better solution, and then you should just let them have their way. Or when you really care so much about the relationship and you're investing in this relationship bank account, and you just better say less, right? And let the issue resolve or go away, and then let them have their way. And I think during the COVID-19, we may have oftentimes conflict at home or at work since we don't see our coworkers as much. And then we need to make the judgment call when to use lose-win and let people have their way because they know better and you care so much about the relationship. And the caution is to cooperate in a high degree, and this could very well be you losing and at your own expense, right? And if you always lose, that may not be healthy for you either, emotionally and spiritually. So you need to pray and have the assessment and the right decision when to choose this approach. And because this way you work against your own goal and you're not getting your needs met. And then the third one is a lot of times we do is compromising. We just kind of split in half, right? Middle cooperate and middle assertive. And we try to find a middle ground. Oftentimes we may use this approach and both get something, but both needs are not being met because it's not fully met, right? So like the orange we talked about, Justin get half of the juice and I got half of the peel, but actually we could have been more collaborative. So neither of us get the whole need met, and yet it's get by. It's mutually acceptable. It's splitting the difference, so it's partial, mix. And when is this acceptable? When we don't have enough time. When we think a temporary solution, that's fine, we'll just go ahead and we both get something, we'll just move on. And the caution there is that we may try to use compromise and then we miss the opportunity to understand each other better, to figure out and think out of the box And perhaps there's a better way, just like the orange example, where we can get all the orange and we can get all the peel after we take the time to communicate, to understand each other's needs. And then competing is when we aim to win. We're not cooperating and we just make sure want to be win-lose and very too assertive, right? So when we stand up for my own right and defend and want to beat the other side, it only care about myself. When is this appropriate? It's when there's an emergency. Your time is really tight and you know what you're doing and you know it's the right decision, especially if you're in a leadership role. And sometimes, for example, some unpleasant decision like job cuts or budget cuts or ending a project, some of these would end up being competing because you know that's the direction you're given or you know that's the right direction. So people may not like it, they will be on the losing side, and yet you know this is what you need to do. Then you would have to, hopefully people support you, and that would be competing, and you ended up in win-lose. And of course, the caution there is, again, about relationship. This could really hurt relationship in a big way, and we didn't give it a chance to understand each other enough. And then finally, the best of all cases is collaboration, win-win, right? When we cooperate, when we're assertive, have the confidence that we can work it out. And this, of course, takes a lot of time and takes many good prerequisites. And we're going to go through more of these this time and in September, where how we can find win-win solution and mutual respect. Listening is huge. We're going to go through exactly, and we talked about listening skill in the past, right? And how to explore disagreement and learn to understand why they disagree and learn to figure out some creative solution and team up. And believe it or not, this way you really invest in a very powerful relationship. Because of this conflict, and this is a healthy conflict, you ended up not just lose-lose or win-lose or lose-win, you ended up doing a win-win and be able to break away from the mold. And when is this suitable? Especially when it's a complex project and a lot is at stake and you have time and requires some very creative thinking and you need to reframe. And this is when you are willing to invest and everyone can listen. And there's very methodical step to interview and understand each other's perspective and then think collectively as a team. And that way you wouldn't really miss out some good ideas. So the caution there is needs a high degree of trust, right? This is ultimately our goal. We want to have trusted relationship and reach consensus with each other. So as we move on to the next phase, right? This cartoon reminds us, you should follow my advice because it works for me. You've got to follow me. This is all about me, myself, and I. And then the other party say, no, that's you, but it doesn't work for me. I'm not you. And say, oh, that's ridiculous, right? So this is a real problem. So when we have conflict, these are the typical 3 responses that we may run into, right? Aligning to the 5 that we just talked about. This is called peace faking. Oh, we basically avoid, right? Just run away, flight or flee or freeze, deer in the headlight. This is when we just think about ourselves. I don't want to deal with it. I escape. And we just talked about the avoiding, right? We didn't want to communicate and we deny and make excuses. And then the problem will continue to get worse. So this seem like peace, but it's faking. It's not real peace. And then when you compete and fight, right? And think about win-lose only, and that's when you break the peace, right? We just talked about that. And this is when we focus on the other people. It's all about their fault. It's their mistake, finger pointing and attack people, even public fighting or critical spirit. So for ourselves, let's think about and reflect, do we do this, right? In the work setting or family setting? And ended up damaging the results, not good testimony as a Christian. And we want to be in control, really blame and all these negative emotions, right? And violence and hatred. So those are breaking the peace. And then I created the word flow. I think peacemaking is the best, of course. That's when we have collaboration or even sometimes some partial compromise. And that's when you flow and be a blessing. And you'll be a blessing to flow, to bless other people when we focus not myself, not others, but focus on God. What does the Bible say? We're going to look at some Bible verses. And the goal is to restore the relationship. And oftentimes this is so needed, right? So this is when the conflict could be healthy. It helps to build public and private relationship. And especially very careful. In public, we want to praise people. And when you have certain suggestion or criticism or recommendation, do it in private. So that would help be a peacemaker. And sometimes let the small things go, right? Just overlook them. And then they would just not as important, we talked about, right? Not worth fighting, pick your battle. And be gracious when you do want to confront them. So those are the 3 typical responses. And when we think about how to resolve conflict, in general, we say somehow we just meet in the middle. That's the part easy, or your way or my way. Or there's an option that we could think about meet later, especially if we are very emotional, very tense, very frustrated. Make sure we give it time, take a pause. In fact, there's a term that I really like. It's called the emotional balcony. I allow my emotion, my mindset to go to a balcony, to emotionally to know that, oh, I can leave this situation and give myself more space and give the other person more space so that I could look at the balcony and see a much bigger picture and take a break. Let's all take a break and meet later. So in general, these are quick 4 steps that we can think about when we have a conflict and say, okay, what just happened? What did I say? What did I do? What did they say? What did they do? What can I do differently? And what did the Bible say? And what can I do? So let's look at some of the Bible verses to tell us how to actually deal with conflict, right? If we want to be a peacemaker, and we know very well from Matthew 5:9, the Beatitude, blessed are the peacemaker, for they will be called children of God. And Jesus himself is the best example, isn't he? Jesus came to reconcile and to make peace with us when we were still sinners and go against God. So we can breathe and live grace and be peacemaking. And that's when we want to glorify God and trust God and ask God to help us. And it's not easy. And yet when you are able to start to trust and obey and really learn, you are going to be the ultimate winner. And the Bible gives us so many wisdom, so much wisdom and many ideas, right? How to be wise. So purple is for the right thing. When we are the royal priesthood, we are the princes and the princess of God. We are God's children. We would want to be royal and wear purple and have the wisdom to do the right thing, to be peacemaking and be sincere, as opposed to red, right? Being very negative, very envious. And we probably could tell very easily when we are in the wrong spirit. And then that's in James 3. And 1 Peter chapter 2 also reminds us, if we are careful not to wage so against ourselves, because you know what, when we're angry, when we're upset with the conflict, who hurt the most? We got hurt the most. So we need to be cautious. So we rather learn to live good lives among people who may not have the same value and choose to do the right thing. And that really builds on how much faith we have and how intimate our relationship is with God. The more aligned we are with the Holy Spirit, the easier it is to follow and use God's wisdom. And then have the mindset of serving others, right? A servant leader, where we can help others to be their best for the greater good, to encourage them, to also, if we recognize it's something that they're wrong, and learn how to help them to improve from what is wrong and help them and carry their burden. So in Luke chapter 6, remind us not just to love our friends, but also to love our enemies. And it's not easy, again, depending on how much wisdom and how much strength that we get from God. So when we have a conflict, the first thing we could do is to pray for yourself and pray for the other person, for God to intervene, to give us wisdom. And when we say, if they hit your one cheek and you also turn the other cheek, and that also needs to be done with wisdom, right? It's not without wisdom, without any boundaries, and just let people have all their ways. And Luke chapter 6 reminds us. And at the end, we also want to be careful not to judge, right? Remember when you judge someone with one finger pointing at someone, you actually have four fingers pointing at yourself. So be careful, and we know, and learn how to forgive what may be unforgivable, and to love the unlovable, because God has done that for us. And ultimately, we could be so blessed. And I'm sure we all could have experienced that. And I've experienced a lot of that in my work in the 33 years. And I've shared some of the stories. When I retired, people actually really saw how I took Jesus to work and have the lights. And it's easier said than done, and yet it's worth it. So Matthew 10:16 is one of my favorite to really remind us it's not just always being taken advantage of. It's not just always being a carpet being stepped on. We can be shrewd as snake and innocent as dove, and know how to draw the line and be assertive, right? So it's a matter of the communication skill that we talked about and how we can put those into practice. So in 1 Corinthians 10:31 remind us, whatever we do it all for the glory of God. Our words, our action, our attitude. And the good news is we're not doing it on our own. We are not struggling on our own. God is on our side. He helps us. So Matthew 7 reminds us, don't just look at the speckle in your brother's eye. Did you see this big plank in your own? Remember the one finger pointing at someone? You actually have four fingers. So when you have a conflict, pray for yourself, pray for the other person, and then look at what did you do, right? Remember the steps that we talked about. What did you do? What did you say? Reflect on it. And what did they do? And what did the Bible say? And what should I do next? And how can I be gentle to restore this relationship? So we could glorify God to serve others, and then be able to grow to be more Christ-like. So conflict is actually an opportunity to help us really be tested and to be trained and to build our patience and perseverance, right? Especially as parents in conflict with our children. That's opportunity to show love and show acceptance, and also time to perhaps apologize and repent and change on what I need to correct. So in Romans 8 also encourage us that all things work together for the good of those who love him. Time and time again, God showed himself faithful, and he's on our side. He knows, God does not ever take a break, right? He didn't go on vacation. He's always involved as long as we invite him and we welcome him to be involved. So he has a purpose. And I always mention, right? God does not waste anything. He uses it for a reason. And ultimately, our trials and tribulation can be used to build up our perseverance, build our faith, and build our wisdom. So how does God work in wisdom in times of conflict? He knows what he's doing. He knows what's best for us. So in conflicts and trials, he knows. And he allows us to be partners with him, to use this opportunity to help us see it's not an accident. It's actually an opportunity, right? In Chinese, it's 不是偶然的,是必然的. So just like this pandemic, it's not an accident. We may not understand all the reasons, and yet we are already seeing it not as an obstacle, right? We see opportunity. We have so many opportunities to learn. We have more seminars than you can ever imagine these days, right? And you get all zoomed out or really kind of becoming a zombie, right? Not a zombie, because you're doing so many Zooms. So there are opportunities, and turn the obstacle into opportunities. And God doesn't want to just tell us what we want to know, but also tell us what we need to know. There's some character issue that we need to grow because of this conflict. So that's when healthy conflicts are. and also help us to build our trust in him, right? I love this hymn, trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. So, I like the letter ABC, right? Adversity builds character. And when you don't give up, you get up, you build up stronger character, perseverance, resilience, and grit. All these words do not come easy, and they come with very deep decisions and experience and deep faith, and know that. And it's through failures that we can succeed, as long as you learn from your failure and don't make the same mistake over and over again. So through this conflict, you learn how to handle those conflicts better. So Romans 5, right, our favorite verse, to remind us that we can even have joy and glory in suffering. Because from suffering produce endurance. Endurance produce character. And character gives us hope. And hope is what we all need. In this time of COVID-19, we want to see light at the end of the tunnel. We know there's hope. Vaccine's going to come. We need to be diligent and be setting boundary and observant, right? Wear mask and wash your hands and such. So we know, right? And we know how to set the boundary, and there's hope. And finally, in closing, ultimately, especially when we are interacting with fellow believers, we are one body, one unit in unity. Same at work, we're one team, one company, one organization, one project, and we all play different roles. Let's be respectful and know how the body has different parts, right? Different body parts has different function, different strength, the way that God created and designed us. So let's learn to respect each other. So that's the summary of our part 1 today on aiming to build unity, and know that the two parties involved and learn how to reconcile with a different approach, whether you avoid, accommodate, compromise, compete, or the best will be collateral in different collaborate in different situations, right? And be sure to work toward the positive outcome, not just negative outcome, right? And make the conflict a healthy conflict in a way that we can learn, we can grow, and build trusted, healthy, and win-win relationship. And we learned the 3 myths, the 3 responses, right? Whether you flee or fight or flow. And let's just pray and help each other to flow and be a blessing to flow and bless other people. And then the 3 purposes of really experiencing God. So next time when we come back on September 11th, a special day of this country, with a heavy heart, when we come back on September 11th, after Labor Day, we will dive into the remaining journey of 1 through 9. So we'll go to 4 to 9, where I introduce 6 acrostics and multiple techniques and things to watch out for, like the 7 deadly sins, and how this journey of 1 through 9 in resolving conflict. So hope to see you on September 11th. And Justin will take some questions.
Okay, thank you, Elaine, for your, again, insightful. I mean, every time I get on your seminar, I always pick up a few nuggets. So personally, I'm grateful for the opportunity, and for those that attended, and I hope that you also gain something today and be able to practice, right? And that was really awesome, Elaine. Thank you very much, Elaine. We know you're extremely busy, so we really appreciate your time.
So Justin, to your point, practice. So this is something I encourage all of you, especially for those of you who have a friend on this call. Pick a partner, right, as a peer to help each other. What you're going to stop doing, and do more or do less, and really encourage you. And if you have any question, you can contact me with these contact information. We also have a call to work WeChat group. So yeah, I'd like to take some questions, Justin, and really put them
Okay,
into
so
practice.
with that, let's take a look at what questions we have. So in the chat,
Or open up your mic. Yeah, there's some questions. Go ahead.
so I'm speaking. All right, I show myself. In the chat room, there are a couple of questions right now. One is one person said that we have big conflict in church and ended up in a splitting. And what should we do to bring peace again between the two separate groups? That's one question.
Yeah. So good thing is if it's in church means that we are fellow believers and that we also have conflict and we split because we're sinners and we're forgiven sinners and we learn from Paul and Barnabas. So I think it's very good that we work on reconciliation, forgiveness, and coming back together. Now, it doesn't mean the church need to come back as one church. It's okay. Maybe it's good to be two different groups, right? We have different ways of worshiping. So we recognize the differences and agree to disagree. Most important is to have unity in spirit. Unity in spirit, where we reflect on what happened. Remember those 4 steps. What did I do? What did I say? What happened? Right? And what did they do? And then reflect, why do they think that way? And then have a discussion and acknowledge, agree to disagree in certain things, and yet still have that unity, right? Step journey 1 is unity, recognizing that we're different, agree to disagree, and make peace and pray, right? Prayer is so powerful. And for us in a family, in a marriage, every day as my husband and I pray, there's no way that we will go to bed angry, right? When after you pray, we're already easy to forgive each other and apologize to each other. So that's what I would recommend.
Wow, such a wisdom. Don't carry the anger into sleeping. Okay. All right. Next question. How can we deal with people who refuse to communicate?
Very good question. And it does happen. And remember, it's all starting with and end with what? Relationship, right? So as Christian, I would definitely first pray for myself and pray for this person and pray for wisdom how to build relationship. They don't want to communicate. There has to be reasons, right? What is the root cause? Why do they not want to communicate? So pray for wisdom, pray for them, pray for myself, and look for ways to reach out with an olive branch. Be the flowing blessing. How can I build relationship when they feel comfortable, pleasant, accepted, ready and open to even start saying a word, 2 words or 3 words, and then a sentence? Baby steps, small wins, and help to reinforce positive actions. Catch them do right. The moment they're willing to say a little phrase, oh, thank you for sharing your thought, or even just an emotion expressing. So we need to pray for wisdom, pray for each other, and be wise, not to keep nagging, complaining, and criticizing, right? Think how to build a positive relationship to nurture. And also understand why don't they want to speak. Maybe they're just on the quiet side, and that's okay, right? And find ways that could communicate in a way that they feel comfortable, meet them where they are, and then positive reinforcement. The moment, the teeny little things that they do in communicating, thank them, encourage them, appreciate them, and accept the way they are, right? And if you think you might have caused them shut down and not willing to talk to you, ask God for humility and vulnerability, being vulnerable, and tell them, apologize, right? And that would help them to lower their guard. Ultimately, begins and ends with the relationship. 有关系就没关系. So we pray for that relationship that's trusted and win-win. And I know it's not going to be easy. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. So the next one is, it's between mom and daughter. Daughter is introvert, doesn't like to talk, and moody as well. It's hard to reconcile. What can we do?
Yeah, so similar to the one earlier, especially if it's mother-daughter, that is very special relationship. It's very sweet. It may not be so sweet now, and that's our goal and our prayer and our dream, to develop that sweet relationship. So again, think from their daughter's perspective. If you're assuming you're the mom, I'm guessing, right? And mom and parents are called to be the leaders. We are supposed to be more mature and more experienced, even though we're also learning how to be parents, right? We're in the parenting school, just like our children. So let's start with us. Ask God to give us wisdom, pray for ourselves, pray for our daughter. Again, how can I find creative ways to build relationship with her? What does she like to do? What games? What shopping? What movie? What activities? What walks? What hiking? What food? What cooking? What are things that we can build relationship and bridges that are less intense? Meet her where she is. You cannot expect her to jump overnight. It's going to take time, investment. And whatever the past might have been that caused the relationship, so reflect on them. And then if she's really introvert, that's okay, right? If that's how she likes to be quiet. And then maybe other ways to communicate. It could be laughing, joking, playing games. Doesn't have to be verbal, right? Not everyone is the same. So some people could be introvert, and help them to be successful in the way that they're introvert, and still help them learn how to express themselves gradually, slowly, and surely. Now, moody. So we are parents. We have 18 years to invest in our children. We want to treasure every moment, every teachable opportunity. If they're moody, and that goes back to many of the communication skills that we learned, right? When they're moody, we want to catch the right place, the right time, the right moment. When they're moody, you want to let them have a break. Let them pause until the time that you're in a good mood, both of you, and then discuss and reflect. And I'm assuming this daughter didn't say how old, assuming, at different ages. If they're older, we would hold the daughter more responsible. Let them tell you what they think. So reflect on this together, like the 4 step I mentioned. What did I do? What did they do? What does the Bible say? And what should I do next? So go through those steps with them. Reflect and discuss instead of lecture, instead of preaching, instead of scolding, controlling, and commanding. Learn to discuss, share. Use I statement. I feel hurt when you were yelling at me, when you were moody. And I want to understand why you are upset, right? So that's all the communication skill, to go and meet with your daughter where she is. What is bothering her? There's got to be some need that's not being met. And of course, we need to learn to set boundary condition. So I hope that would help. And it, again, takes time to build up relationship, positive reinforcement. So the moment and the opportunity that she's willing to say something, your daughter, or the mood is steady and stable, say, oh, Amy, I love how you are so calm, even though when this didn't work out. So catch them do right, instead of nagging and complaining when they do wrong. Remember, not just remember the see the speckle in your brother or your daughter's eye, remember also your plank. So pray for yourself, pray for your daughter, and look for these wisdom to build a relationship. I see the next question, Justin. They asked for a presentation. So you're going to have YouTube, so you can replay it.
Yeah, we have recordings online, so we will post it in our website, and I think you can go from there. That's not a problem. I think one last question here. Someone was asking on behalf of the coworker who had misunderstanding with her manager. and end up she lost her position at the end of 9th month.
Hmm.
What are the ways to resolve this kind of things?
Yeah, this is very real. Thank you, Justin. Thank you for asking. And that's why we went through all the foundation and the basics. 9 months. And remember, I gave the talk on having effective communication with your boss for past relationship. 9 months. So this is not overnight. In the 9 months, from the moment, the day, the week, and the month that you notice there's some conflict with your boss, you want to be proactive, right? Prevention is better than cure. Think about the one-on-one meeting, how to set up those discussions, how to seek to understand what is the boss not happy about, what is the conflict about. Of course, we always start with the prayer and then talk to coworkers, mentors, advisors to get wisdom and what they see, and then structure constructive one-on-one meeting with your boss. Listen, ask for suggestion how you can improve. Understand what the source of the conflict is different personality, different approach of solving problems. Remember, we went through all the different models. What is the right approach? Again, build that relationship. How can we meet the boss where the boss is? Why? Where are they coming from? Why is that conflict here? So have to understand the root cause and then address the cause with the right solution. And ultimately, it's the relationship. And I'm sorry that it's the 9 months, right? And it's through those, through the probation period that we learn how to face those conflicts in a positive approach. Communication, get to understand and share different perspectives.
Okay, the next question. What if communication is on surface level only, as in politically correct? Things do not change due to person's strong thinking position from authority. It could only be avoided or accommodating, question mark.
Mm-hmm. Very, very deep question. So actually communication, there are 5 levels, right? First level is, oh, Justin, how are you? Did you have lunch? Just like casual, quote unquote, peripheral, right? Second level is, oh, today you're very busy. You have to host this workshop. So a little bit deeper about what's going on, some simple facts. The third level is, oh, what do you think of that workshop? Was it helpful? It's like opinion. Requires a little bit of a mind thinking, right? Starting with some mind connection. The fourth level is the heart connection. Justin, did you feel some suggestions addressing some conflict that you're now actually going through and struggling with? And start to have a heart connection with Justin, right? It's like, yeah, I feel more relieved. I know now how to handle my boss because of this conflict. I'm going to use this approach, right? So the fourth level is heart. And the fifth level is the spirit, really with fellow believers when you get to the, not just the head, but heart and also the spirit. So those are the goals that we want to grow toward based on how deep our relationship and how intimate the relationship with each other. So what to do if there are people who are very strong position, it's about command and control and their authority because they have a title. And we know, right, the 5 levels of leadership. People who have a title, then we have to follow you. It's the lowest level, it's level 1, right? According to John Maxwell's definition. So I would, again, look at the models that we learned and look at the situation. If you think it's always avoiding and accommodating, that's not the right approach. Then you need to create opportunity and have the right communication skill to guide the relationship, to ask the right questions, to have a team building approach where you can help the other side to see alternative and solution and think out of the box. And one very powerful skill is, even though it's your idea, if you have a way to share the idea and facilitate the discussion in a way that at the end of the discussion, the team or the other party feel that it's their idea, it's the collective team's idea. People always love to buy and support their own idea. If you can help guide and facilitate the discussion using the right communication technique, that they say, wow, Justin, what a good idea. Or, oh, this is now our idea. Then it will become more collaborating. So assess the situation, think what would be the best model and the right outcome, and then use the right communication skill to help guide that discussion and build a relationship toward that goal. And be a good listener. We're going to talk a lot more of those practical skills next time.
Okay, that was very great answers, right? For all the questions that were raised. Unfortunately, times fly by and we're out of time today. So for those of you who still have questions, hold them and write them down. And next session on September 11th, our part 2, we're going to show you, or at least Elaine will show you a lot of skills and techniques on how to handle it on a more practical level. And maybe at that time, you will have the answers readily available. So please mark your calendar, right? September 11th, Friday at the same time, right? Same time, so that you can come and pick up those skill sets that you have been longing for.
And better yet, maybe you come back with some win-win stories or success story, and I love to hear about them, right? Between now and
time for that, right, Elaine?
Yeah, you have 3 weeks, so you can work on them. So I'm giving another talk tomorrow in Mandarin about joy at work and joy at home. Tomorrow's topic is about how to quote unquote balance between family, work, and ministry. And then the next Saturday is communication skill. This one, most of you have probably heard in the English version. So this will be Chinese version, may not be exactly the same. So it's a series that CCIU offer. So you're welcome to join, and they have a Zoom link here so you can take a picture. And I think there's also one more that's, so Justin, go ahead.
Okay, so for that, we are going to close our seminar today. So here are some barcode, or not barcode, but QR codes that you can take a picture of, or you can scan, right, to be part of what we do. And so that you know, we're actually also promoting another event, which is in the coming days. Today is 21st, and the next this one is on 27th, which is a Thursday. It's a Thursday night at 8 a.m. So if you're looking for some guidance during this pandemic about economy, the macroeconomy, how things will affect all of us, and what measures you can take. So this session will be a very good one, right? And so hopefully you also mark your calendar and make sure that if you're interested, make sure you get on. You sign on early, so that because if the lines are all taken, then you might have to just look at the recording. Okay, with that, again, I thank Elaine for helping us going through a lot of difficult situations, and hopefully all of you who will return, and I really want all of you to return, right? So that you can get the second half, the more practical. And if you have stories that you want to share, that will be your time. All right. So you can also practice to speak into the camera, which I think a lot of us are just plainly of fear, right? Fear and afraid. So with that, thank you, and have a nice weekend.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thanks.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Great sharing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you very
I thought usually if people are interested in, they can actually come here, take a take a picture if you want.
Yeah.
great seminar.
Okay. Thank you, 国伟 Alice，辛苦你们了。
Thank you, Elaine.
好
Thank
have a
you,
good
Elaine.
weekend，好，拜拜。
Have a nice weekend.
好，拜拜。
哇，
All right.
离开了，好吧？哦，对，我 stop，
Have a good one, everyone.
已经停掉了，对不对？
对，我已经停掉了。
好的，呀，哦，我已经把那个 screen cut email 给你跟 Elaine 了，就那个。
谢谢。
呀，
对，谢谢。And Justin，谢谢你。
Oh, not at all.
Thank you very much for your help.
那我们就
How does it look? I didn't have a chance.
Which one?